So in this video, we are going to go over object-oriented programming. And what objects are in Python are, they're everything's an object in Python. They're either like Python base objects, so like integers, strings, or base types rather. But then you can also just make your own objects. So what is an object? Well, I think that's kind of hard for me to explain, as I just tried, right? Everything's an object. So I think a better question is like, what do objects contain? And so objects contain attributes, and they contain methods. And that's mostly it. Most objects have an init method, and we'll talk about double underscore methods in Python. That's like a whole other type of thing. So I'll be using the init method in this, but just know that any method in Python that has double underscores before and after it, they're called dunder methods. So just a little aside, init is called a dunder method, and it stands for double underscore. And dunder methods are also called magic methods. And what that means is like Python knows what to do with that method. It's kind of designed in Python, and you can create your own init method, but because it's called init, Python knows exactly what to do with it. So I think the first thing is, let's just make an object and kind of talk about what's going on in it. So I'm going to make an object. We'll make a person object. Okay. And I'll say name Raphael. I'm not going to spell my last name. You don't need to see my last name spelled. You probably see it anyways. Don't worry about it. In fact, we'll just put Rafa here, lowercase. Age equals, we'll put 35. State state, not emotional state, we'll put like physical location state, or maybe location's better than state, equals Texas. So we'll put Texas here, and then that's it. I have now built an object. So I've built an object, but because I use class, I haven't actually like put that. So I can't just do like person. I have to assign that object to a variable. So I'm just going to create x equals person, just like this. And if I go to type x, it is a person type because I have called it a person type. I could have called it persona. And when I run this, it's now a persona type. So we're literally telling Python, hey, we're making our own type of object, and Python knows what to do with it. So how do I get access to these attributes? Well, attributed methods of objects are all found with dots. So you type in the variable name, you type a dot, and you see how these pop up, and these are attributes. Like I say x.age, x.name, x.location, and I can get my age, name, location from that. And these are attributes. So we'll put that in the notes above. Let me just come up here and type these notes. Attributes. So the syntax for attributes are variable dot attribute. They come, in other words, attributes are called on with a dot at the end of the variable. So that's an attribute. But let's say I also want to make a method. I want to say define say hello. So I can actually make a method on this person. I have to pass in self. We'll talk about what self is. Self is just the object itself. It's a difficult concept, I think, to explain. You just kind of have to see it. And I'm going to return hello world. Excuse me. So now I can make this person still a person type. All that still works. But now I can go x dot say hello. And I can run this method. And it says hello world. So I'm running a method like I would any function, but this method is attached to my object. So we have methods, syntax is variable dot method. And notice the difference. Attribute doesn't have the parentheses because it's not a function. It's not a method. It is like a property. I think of attributes as adjectives and methods as verbs. So, and objects are nouns. So objects are things that have adjectives or properties and do methods. They like can do a task or can fulfill a method. Excuse me. So we have our x dot say hello down here, and it's just a method and it runs. Okay. So this is one way to create an object. Now the problem with this is like if I wanted to say x equals person and I wanted to change the name of the person, I would have to do it like this. I'd have to say x name, x dot name equals, and I can put something in like, let me think of a cool name that I've just recently been a David. And I can say x dot name, and now their name is David, right? So to change the name, I have to do it like this. So this is kind of a crappy way to do it, because if you wanted to make a new person with a different name, different location, you'd have to first make the person and then go and like type all this stuff in it. And it's just not ideal. And then we'll do like 30. So we can do this, but it's not ideal. You can't really do that on the fly. It's not really good practice, right? We don't want to make our object and then change our object. We like to make our object, and then if we do change our object, we like methods to do that. We don't really like to change anything doing it this way. It's not, you can do it. It's not great coding practice. We use methods to change things. So this is where the init method comes in. Add a text. Let's learn about init. And what init does is Python, when you instantiate an object, so this is instantiating an object. This is instantiating an object. You'll hear that word instantiation a lot. I just get really confused by it. What is instantiation? It's literally just where you say x equals object. This is it. It's assigning the object to a variable. That's it. This is object. We have instantiated our object. So here we've created our object. We've like made our class. But to instantiate it, you actually have to like set it equal to something. It's not like super, it's not like a crazy difficult concept, but you know, if you never heard that word before, it can be a little confusing. So I don't want to assume that it's just simple for people to understand. So the init method, when you instantiate an object, Python, when you instantiate an object, will automatically run your init method and do what you want. That's it. It just does whatever you want. So let's make our person. We're going to get rid of all this, and we're going to make under our person an init method. Now, every method for now, this actually isn't true, but let's just treat it like it's true. Every init method, or every method in a class object, has to have the word self there. So cool. I've made a person with an init method, and I can say x equals person. And that init method ran. But what do we have under it? Pass, right? So this is like a normal regular method. The only difference is the name. It has to be double underscore init double underscore. There's no getting away from that. There's no escaping that. You have to do that for Python to know what to do. So, but we could do anything. Like I can say print hi dude. And so I created my class, and when I instantiate it, Python's going to go in. In fact, I'll do this. I'll say print executing init method. In fact, I'll do this. Print before init method. We'll see if this gets printed. I've never done this before. And we'll say print after init method, just to see what actually happens. So see, whenever I create my class now, it ran these two methods. Why did it run those two methods? Because when I execute this cell, what happens is Python's reading this code, and it just runs through and it prints this. It reads this method. It doesn't execute the method yet because it hasn't been called. It's just been defined. And then it executes this print statement. So we'll call it. Notice these didn't get printed, so don't put print statements like that. That's good. But this did, right? Because Python runs that init method. Python, when you instantiate an object, will run this method. So why? So now we know what the init method does, right? In fact, let's put it at the top, just so we have init method. So Python runs this upon object instantiation. Cool. So we know Python's going to run this when you instantiate an object. The question is then, well, how do we leverage it to do cool stuff, right? So here I'm going to put name. Okay. And I can now pass in a variable called name. So I'm going to say name, but I can't just do name equals something now, because like I could up here, because I didn't put this in an init method. But when you're in a method, like to attach something to your object, to say, hey, I want name to be an attribute, you have to say self.name. And self is just like, if you want to say x equals person, you can think of self as x. So x.name equals. And then x.name. So this references our attribute, and this references this variable. So I'll do it like this. Name to pass in, just so they don't have the same variable name. So self is going to be x. Like you have to think of it like x. Anytime you see the word self, you have to think my variable is self. X.name equals whatever I pass in here. So I'm going to do this. And now look, whenever I do x equals person and I put parentheses, it wants me to pass in a name. So name to pass in is Rafa. And boom. I've got a name now. So here's the name. That's the attribute. Self.name is attribute. And I can get my attribute the same way I did last time. So we can pass in a lot of attributes now. So I can do name to pass in, age to pass in, location to pass in. And I'm going to go ahead and call it that. We typically don't like call it this. We'll just say name, age, and location. But it can be confusing if you've never seen this before to know, like, all right, the age equals the age to pass in, and then self dot location equals location to pass in. So what's happening is someone calls this object, they're going to pass in 3 of these values, and we're going to slap these 3 values onto our object. So I'm going to run this. Now I have name to pass in as Rafa, age to pass in is 35, location to pass in is Texas. And then I'm just going to do vars x. Vars is a Python method that'll spit out all your attributes and values of your object as a dictionary. So here I have it. I have age, 35, location Texas, name is Rafa. Cool. And now I can make another method, right? Define say hello. Return hello world. I can do the same thing, and I could say x dot say hello still. Whoops. Say hell. Cool. So what I think is a good practice is create an object, use the init method, and assign some attributes. A great way to do this is create an animal object and give it 3 attributes: species, age, and name. Maybe some other objects as well. Like, is it I don't know, like type, mammal, reptile. I don't know what all those types are. I used to teach life science. I don't even know all this, but you could do this as well. So I think this is a good first step. Get this done. If you want me to look at your code, go ahead and send me your code in the Discord channel, and I will happily take a look at it, and we can all just compare code. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'll put this link to this notebook so you can have it. You go ahead and turn on sharing. Anyone with the link can view. Copy link. I'll go ahead and put this in the YouTube video. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.